Recording. Welcome back, everybody. Last time we were here, we spent the last part of class kind of like looking at the photoblog deal and, hey, what would be the best solution for that? And so I've worked on that since then, and I got a solution which I'm really happy with. And so that's, you have it either here under 99 SVC, because this kind of became its own little teaching pathway, kind of a condensed version of what we're doing in the class. So right there you have it, and you also have it up here, the exact same one. I think I put it under right here, so that's that. And if we look at these two files, they're going to be the exact same code. So that's exactly how this sort of repository works, or whatever. This folder in this repository is a condensed version. 99 SVCC is a condensed version of everything we're doing up above, but that's kind of good. Right? Because it's nice to go through and look at all the detail and step by step and everything as we're learning it, and kind of really explore something thoroughly, know it from many different angles. And it's also nice to sort of like, instead of being so caught up in the trees, the details, to step back and see the whole forest, and real quickly just be able to sit down in an hour or two, let me just step through the entire process we went through at a higher level and see the big points, right? So that's kind of what this one does down here. So that file and this file should be exactly the same, and as I toggle between them, you see no difference, right? One is there we go, no difference between those files. So, I thought we'd just kind of like real quickly sort of do a walkthrough. How many people want to do a walkthrough? Look at it on your own time. We could come back to looking at the photo blog, but that's where it's at. It's really, I'm really happy with it, and that doesn't mean there's still not room for improvement, but sort of got everything abstracted out into their own functions, so it's pretty clean, so you can see the functionality of each one. And then this was the part where, for a while, right here, Daniel suggested, hey, you should actually do a git SHA encryption of each file and store that as the file name. That way, if two people are uploading, a photo with the same name, they don't overwrite each other, right? Because every name will now be unique. And if people sort of like, and I think that's also how Dropbox does it, right? If two people upload the same file, we are only storing it once, and we could just have both user accounts pointing to that file, and until one of them wants to change it, and then we deal with that. But so right here, I sort of do the SHA-1 of the file, and then up here, when I tried to copy the file, it would just create the file, but then there'd be nothing in it. And so what happened was, when I was trying to write the file, it was already at the end of the file from reading it right here, creating the SHA. And so I had to reset the reader or whatever, the seeker. How would you say that?
Moving the read pointer to the beginning of the file, I think, would be the best.
There we go. And that's what this did right here. And I'm not checking for errors. Like, a lot of things in here have like, hey, check for error. I'm just throwing it away, right? Including this right here, just to sort of keep it more condensed. But if this was real code, you'd put all that error checking in there. All right. So that was pretty cool, just to get that working. But I really want to just push forward with App Engine and all that stuff. And I didn't get to the data store things, but I did get all the way through Memcache. And so data store is going to be on Monday, and then that's where it's really kind of like exciting, because we're really starting to do things where we're storing stuff for people. So the transition between sort of doing just like the language and building our own servers and TCP and all that, and then moving to App Engine, there's some just like informational things that sort of have to be covered. And so that's been kind of like a little bit like, it was a little bit turbulent for me at boot camp going through that. I don't know how it was for other people. And then like figuring out how to convey that to all of you is like also been sort of like, okay, and so it's just a little bit scattered, like, there's this piece, there's this piece, there's this piece. So that's what I'm going to show you, is just some different pieces. And then at the end of class, we're going to focus in on some actual like concrete, here's how we do Memcache. And if we have time left over, we'll figure out what else to do with that. So we're going to look at App Engine, services, APIs, and GitHub. And the first thing I think is just, is being aware that if you do App Engine Go, you have this place, the Go runtime in whatever environment, but this is like the App Engine sort of, deal where you learn about Go and App Engine. If you just look for App Engine, like what could be run on App Engine, Google App Engine, maybe this is it. You could run Python, Java, PHP, or Go on App Engine, right? Any of those 4 choices. No Node.js, no Ruby, right? Just these are your 4 choices for using App Engine. And if you go to any of these choices, you're going to get a similar sort of, similar. So here's the one for Go, right? Here's the one for Java. Here's the one for Python. Here's the one for PHP. And each of these are going to talk about, hey, how do you do it in PHP? Well, there's the PHP tutorial, the Python tutorial, the Java tutorial, right? And anyhow, those are all the same, but those are the 4 languages you could use on App Engine. And so here's the Go tutorial. We did this pretty much without these user services and handling forms, right? Or the data store. So we went 1, 2, 3, 7 is what we've done so far. And today we're going to look at some of the services and things like that. But the first thing I just want you to see, sorry, going a little fast. The first thing I want you to see is that how do we actually go look stuff up? So this is kind of like the docs for App Engine. And right here you got API reference. And so that wasn't totally clear to me at first when I started using App Engine, as those of you who are in the spring class know, right? But right here's the API reference. And so you can come in here, and here you have the App Engine package. And it says import App Engine. So there's a little bit of confusion. We are on the cutting edge, right? And it is, I don't know if this is completely solidified. But when we do stuff, we're going to see things like import, where is it? 49, App Engine. Let me close this. Bow. 98, 52. All right, so here we just click on these. That has nothing in it. What's that? Yeah, we can look at that one. Right, but up here, we aren't just saying import App Engine. We're having to say googlegolang.org App Engine. So that could be a little bit of a pain point that might spin you for a bit. If you're over here in the documentation, you're like, okay, import App Engine, what's up? Why is it not working? Right, and I don't have a perfect answer for this, but Google, Caleb. I'm associating Google and Caleb. They're like stored right next to each other in memory blocks in my head, right? Caleb said, I think this is just in transition, and it's all migrating. I don't know where it's migrating from or to, but because of that, this is where, and we'll look at that a little bit more, like how do we actually look up the document? Can we see this on GoDoc, right? That would be the other question I have, because all of the packages we've seen up till now, it's like, oh, the import path, we could also just take that import path and we could go to godoc.org and then drop in that import path, right? And it should bring it up. And cool, that did bring it up. I actually didn't think it was going to. But that's because I was thinking about this one, golang.org. And, if we just do like the format Golang, that's the easiest way for me to get there. I can never remember the syntax of that one. And then we go here, right? And golang.org has this thing where you put package in front of it. Same documentation for FUMT that you get here at golang.org package FUMT as you get at godoc.org/FUMT. So this right here, right? Let me just illustrate that. Is the same as this right here. We already went over that. Like some dude just created the right. So I thought, well, can I drop this in here, right? Can I do that and get that there? Well, because this isn't the official SDK, no. All right, this is App Engine. Okay, so it's only over at Godoc that I could drop that in and get that, or I could just get it right here off of App Engine under API reference, and that's the App Engine one. But that's that import. I don't know. You could try it. Maybe it'll work. But
it should work.
It still does work.
The import App Engine is there because the Go app, when you hit Go app server, Go app deploy, it's using its own Go path, which has got App Engine in it. So it will work. The downside is, however, your programming IDE will not be able to detect it because it's in a different spot than usual. So if you do the full path, Atom or WebStorm will be able to give you your code hints and such. Whereas if you just do the plain App Engine, where it will still work when you're running it, your IDE will be complaining about it doesn't know what this package is.
Cool. Someday. It's great that I think that's the great thing about pluralism and diversity is just, multiple skill sets, and that's what makes a team really awesome. You got the person who's good at watching the goal. You got the person who's good at, moving the ball down the field or whatever. You got the person who's good with all the playbooks and like which play should we be running now. All right, so the other thing which is cool, I don't think I pointed this out, but this is like, here, this is at golang.org. When you have the package thing, you could change that to source, and you're going to see all the source files that make up that package. And so that's helpful sometimes when you're like, okay, I just want to go in and look at one of the things. So that's just an FYI that I don't know if I mentioned it yet. So here's the API for App Engine, and then here we've got different stuff over here. We got storing data. So you want to learn about data storage? All right, go to storing data. You want to learn about services? Here are the different services we could use. And so one of the services is user. One of the services is Memcache, which we're going to look at today. So if we go and we look at like users, here's the documentation for users, right? For the user service. So these are services that we could, use with App Engine, right? It's pre-written code that helps us do stuff. And so this would be the one for the users, right? And so that's where you see the documentation. That's the takeaway. It's like, okay, where do we find the documentation? And again, to get here, I just go App Engine, go. And I don't know if that's going to bring up the same result for you because, Google is now associated with me that when I search for that, I'm really looking for this. So you know what I'm saying? Like every search result is, we all have our own filter bubbles. Everybody gets a different set of results based upon what you've been looking at. All right. So let's stick with what I've laid out here. So here are just the different random pieces. One of the pieces is talking about PaaS. So there's IaaS, there's PaaS, and there's infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service. And so that is basically just talking about, how many people have heard of this? Raise your hand. How many people have not? Okay, so that's just basically talking about different things that you could purchase when, okay, I don't want to build everything in my own shop, right? I don't want to have to like get fiber optic cable and get my own machines and plug that cable in and have my own DevOps team that like configures all these machines and runs all the software. So at various levels you could outsource that. Information as a service is I'm going to have virtual machines and I don't have to have the hardware, I don't have to have the fiber optic, I don't have to have the building, right? But I could rent that, I could rent that, all using IaaS, and then I could go and install my software on that, the physical stuff. That's infrastructure as a service. Platform as a service is another level up, right? So that's App Engine, and that's got like a lot of code, and things and, functionality. And so that's a platform as a service, right? And then software as a service would be like Salesforce.com, where it's like, hey, they're selling software that, allows our business to do. So, you can see the difference between PaaS and SaaS. With PaaS, we're writing the software, right? And then we're running it on App Engine. We're using a lot of stuff that's been pre-written, right? But we are ultimately writing our own, piece of software which uses that other, library code from App Engine, from Platform as a Service. But ultimately, we're writing our software. With software as a service, you just log into Salesforce.com and they've got all the stuff written and the functionality. I want that functionality, and you start using it. Okay, that's the difference there. You have anything, jump in. So another thing is with App Engine, you've got quotas. So that's just another little piece to sort of pay attention to. And if you go to Google Developers Console, right? So no longer at App Engine Go, no longer at this, but here, Google Developer Console. And then once you get to Google Developer Console, you go into one of your deals. So I'll go into my photo blog. And once you're into one of your deals, somewhere over here you got something called quotas. And that's why I take screenshots, because it's under Compute App Engine Task Quotas. So Compute App Engine Task Queues Quota Details. I think that's going to be quota details, right? And so I guess this is the same slide, but that looks pretty similar. Yeah. But anyhow, you come here, you can look at the different quotas, and then you could also, Google around a little bit and read about, what do you get for free, And so here, and I'm not totally sure how I got here, but you could either just enter this URL directly, or probably somewhere in here there's a link. Show resources. What is my apps? Understanding quotas is probably how I got there, right? Yeah, that looks like the right stuff. Instance hours. Right, so the same thing. So that's going to show you like how much do you get for free before you start paying for it, and then when you do pay for it, what's that cost and how's that determined? Okay, so we talked about that a little bit last week, where you get 28 instance hours, or we talked about that on Tuesday. So nice thing about App Engine is it allows growth. It has a data store, has Google Cloud Storage, which is basically like for storing files, right? You have Compute Engine, which I'm not totally sure what that does, but I think it just allows you to do big analysis, run analysis and processing.
Yeah, it's a big place where you can just punch a bunch of numbers in and it'll calculate over multiple computers to make it fast. So useful if you got a mass amount of data you want to compute that can be done more or less in parallel.
That's awesome. It makes me think of like Amazon Web Services has, that's what AWS stands for, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It has these two engineers from Google started a company, and they basically they were the ones maxing out AWS more than anybody. They were using it more than anybody. And then they sold their company for $1 billion to Monsanto. And what they were doing was processing weather data and then selling crop insurance. I can't remember what it's called, but they did a lot of processing. Random tangent. Managed VMs. So App Engine also has managed VMs. So you can just do virtual machines. So if App Engine doesn't do what you want it to do, you could go get your own virtual machines, and then it's really easy to connect those VMs with App Engine because it's all part of the Google family. And so you could grow, in functionality when you need to.
If you're using the managed VMs, you are allowed to use whatever language you want. You can go to Node.js or whatever. Yeah. If you decide to. It's just trickier to integrate in with the rest of App Engine, but they will let you integrate with App Engine if you decide to do so. I think the managed VMs are still in beta currently, so I don't think you get any of it for free. That one, it's like $15 a month or something. But it gives you the same amount of flexibility as just renting your own server. But while still giving you the platform as a service abilities if you decide you need them.
So that'd be IaaS, right?
Yeah, almost like a level between IaaS and PaaS. It's got the full ability of infrastructure while still giving you the options that platforms got. That'll work.
And then you have Cloud SQL, and then you also have Memcache, which we're going to look at today. App Engine gives you a sandbox environment too, so there's certain things you can't do inside of it. You can't use the unsafe package, good name for a package. You can't write files. So what the unsafe package is like, you want to connect to C and then directly address memory, in a way that you can't do in Go or something. Is that a good description?
Yeah, it's for direct pointer manipulation or for unsafe typecasting, like flipping from a character directly to an integer without converting or something.
Yeah, or it's like Friday night, you go out, you get drunk at a bar, you meet a really cool girl, and then you go back to your place and you both start coding. You can't do anything unsafe, right? It's a sandbox environment. You're both coding and it just stops you from doing anything unsafe. Or you meet a guy, depending upon your preferences. You can't write files. We talked about that. And you can't do outbound HTTP requests, but they have services to do all that. So there's a kind of talk which is somewhat interesting. And this is it right here. And it talks in more detail sort of about App Engine. And I just pulled out some of the slides that this guy went over. And I kind of like the fact that it starts out that Go's awesome. But I'm not going to go into all the details here of App Engine and all that. But I just, I found that somewhat interesting. So boom, pause this video right now if you want to read that. Boom, pause this video right now if you want to read that. Ka-ting, pause this video right now if you want to read that. Pew! Pause this video right now if you want to read that. And pause this video right now if you want to read that. But those are some of the slides from there. So Go on App Engine is much easier than other languages. So I don't have much more to say about that, but that's just one of the points that I've gleaned from all this other stuff. So yay for us. But there is vendor lock-in, right? So you build your stuff on App Engine, and it's going to be difficult to say, oh, I want to run it somewhere else, or I want to use different data storage or something like that. You're going to have to do some switching to fix to get it. All right, so app layout. We already talked about this, but I saw it review, whatever. Package name can be anything you want. Put your code inside of init instead of inside main, and don't use func main. So those are like the main points when like bringing code that you wrote that's just Go into App Engine. That's what it is. And then you need your app YAML, right? And then, here, I mean, just random pieces. You can do versions. And so here we have, can you guys see that all right? Or do you need it bigger? If I need to switch around, I can switch around. So I thought it was interesting. Traffic splitting allows you to route a portion of traffic to non-default versions of your application, which can be useful for slow rollout of a new version or A/B testing different designs or features. Well, I thought that was cool, right? So you could have one site running 50% of your traffic with the green Buy Now button. You could have one site running 50% of your traffic with the red Buy Now button, and you can compare which one has a higher conversion. But that's here under Developer Console, Compute, App Engine versions. Then you also have logs. So how do you check your logs on their server? So this is a Google Developer Console, and so here's under monitoring, under logs. And when you have a crash, you'll see a stack trace for every Go routine. Right? You'll see a stack for every Go routine. So you could go in and you can look at the logs. So that's one of the things we looked at boot camp. And then deploying, right? This is just, we talked about this already, but if you can't just use Go App, if you use Go App Deploy and it doesn't work, here's the other line that you'd use. And you'd run this from the folder where you have your App Engine. So I'd run it from this directory, 51 App Engine, right? If I wanted to do that one.
The O1 subdirectory.
What? Oh, O1. Thank you very much. O1, you're right. I'd run it from O1. Stack. And then GitHub, what do we want to say about that? Oh, so he talked a little bit about how this works in a production environment, and this should be pretty, familiar to you, but whatever. I just kind of went through and transcribed everything. But the typical process for when you're working in a company is, hey, you've got your main production code, it's running, and you want to change something, so you create a branch on GitHub, you make the change, you commit it, you push it, you then ask for a code review from somebody senior in the company who looks at it, says it's good, then it gets merged to master, and then you redeploy. So how many people, you already knew that kind of stuff? How many people, oh yeah, that's kind of a good, sort of me too. It's like, yeah. And so there's also a cool thing inside GitHub where you could do issues, right? So whatever repo you're in, you could click over on issues, and you could create a new issue. And then you could say, hey, here's the issue we're having is like this. There's this issue. And so you can list all of these issues, and then when you go and you look at that issue, right? So I guess now Golang issue 1, right? We're looking at this issue.
Or there.
Or right there. You see that right there, right? We're looking at that issue. And we didn't add, number 1 on there, I don't think. Did we?
No,
they do that.
Yeah.
And
that's GitHub.
That's GitHub. So then we have the issue number there, and so then we could do our commit, and we could add issue number 1, like that, to our commit, and then it automatically associates that commit with this issue, right? And so the commit was fix 500 error issue number 1, and then it just automatically GitHub. It's like, oh wow, hey, that just connected to issue number 1, so it automatically connects your commit to the issue in GitHub, and there we go. So. And then I thought this was just interesting, cool syntax, that little syntax right there. And then he typed in the comment, looks good, deploy, but that gives you a thumbs up. So I thought that was something you absolutely needed to know about. I like that. And so then we talked about APIs that are available for for your App Engine stuff. And so here's where you find all that, the APIs. And so just like to reiterate, what are we learning? There is Go App Engine, right, where we sort of have our documentation and the tutorial, and we could look at examples and see the services. And then there's also Google Developer Console, and Google Developer Console is right where we kind of have each project, and that's where we could configure, all the stuff about each project. And so we were just looking at APIs, and so up here is like, hey, all the different APIs. I want to enable some APIs for this project. Well, some of those are going to have quotas, right? A lot of them probably. You can only use it so much. At a certain point, maybe you need to pay, or at a certain point, we shut you down. And so we looked at the APIs that are available. But those are the two areas, right? We have this area, and then we have Google Developers Console. So that's what you should be thinking when you're doing App Engine. Hey, do I need to look at the docs or something? That's App Engine Go is how I get there when I Google that. Or I say Google Developers Console, and I come in here and I can manage each project. All right, so those are the two areas you're thinking about. And in Google Developer Console, for each project, we have an API. You can see I'm in the project Whack a President. and, and so then we looked at the Google Maps API. Pretty cool. All right, so here we're actually starting to look at how do we set up Google Maps API. So we go into Google Maps Embed API, you click Enabling, right, it enables it, and you create a new key. And then once you've created a new key, there's different keys you could get, right? iOS, Android, browser, server. So I'm going to get a browser key, and then I put in the project whatever ID, and then that's the domain. Thank you. I put in the domain, and then because this is the default domain when you're deploying on App Engine and you're running an App Engine, you can then access your project at this URL. So I put in the URL for the website, and then I get this API key. And then once I have that API key, I could go over to my code and I could put in that API key, and I just made it a constant. And then I could do stuff like this, right? And so like I could have it take a picture and find the coordinates of the picture, what's the lat and the long, and I can map that. And so that's what this code does right here. So we could just sort of pause for a second to take in some code. So, the init, we parse some files. We're parsing an index.html, and then handle func. Anything that comes in, we're going to handle index. And then we're going to open up this image, right? And then we're using that package exif to decode it, right? And that's that, third-party package. And then we're getting the lat and the long of that. And then we have a struct that stores lat and long. Both is float64. How many fields are in this struct? 3. Cool, right? So 1, 2, 3. Latitude and longitude are both type float64, and key is type string. And then we add lat and long to our variable model, and we add the key in, and then we're going to pass that in to execute our template. So what's our template look like, right? So here's our template, and then we just do this line right here for the maps inside our HTML, and we pass in the latitude and longitude and the key. And bam, right? We're doing that, this image right there. So with lat and long, we could pull up a map using Google Maps API. That's pretty cool, I think. And there's the layout down here. Index is the template, the folders. There's the image that got processed. So you can kind of see that too. So more App Engine services. Anybody have any questions?
On that last API, so that responds to GET requests? Is that how the API works?
Yeah, so this one right here is any request that comes in. So we're not...
When we send our...
the API.
Yeah, when we send our request to the API, it's a GET request?
It's an iframe there with the source that leads to some other website, and so iframes basically run another website inside your own website. So Google's got that website, which has a query string with a q equals lat long and a key, and it'll give you just a website that just has the map that you can do stuff with. So if you actually pulled that URL and just typed it into your web browser, it would work. So, but with this, you can just have it inside your own website as just like a sub block.
I'm looking for questions that you don't know how to answer. What is the airspeed of the North European swallow?
At any point, are we going to go over using APIs like in our code as opposed to on our template?
Like the GitHub API for Markdown and such.
I don't know, you answer that question. I'm like processing slow.
Yeah, we did at the summer boot camp near the end of the period, so it would probably be around the last couple weeks here too if we keep up.
Yeah, so far we're doing good.
Yeah.
All right. Is this serving back an image? Could I just use an image tag? That wouldn't work.
No, it's a full website. It's got JavaScript and such, so you can click and drag around and such.
Okay. Interesting. All right. So App Engine services. We kind of already saw this before, but inside of App Engine and where we saw it, was right here, we've got all those services right there, right? And so that's the basic thing that this is showing here, and we're just going to kind of step through some of that a little bit more. And like, there's also the place there where you have data store or storing data, which includes data store, Cloud SQL, and Google Cloud Storage. So you got 4 areas here, 3 of which I can describe to you. Data store is your NoSQL schemaless data storage. It's really fast, right? And it scales horizontally really well. And there's some issues in there where it's got eventual consistency. So, we'll talk about data store more. And by issues, I mean that's just the nature of NoSQL schemaless databases. There's trade-offs, right? This is much faster. This is slower. This can have whatever. We'll talk about that later. But here's Google SQL. So this is just your SQL database. And then we have Google Cloud Storage where you put images or files. What's Blob Store?
It's supposed to be. It's the predecessor to Google Cloud Storage. It's just for putting whatever data you want in. It's deprecated now.
Yeah. Because that's why I was confused. I'm like, binary large object. That's just like a picture or a file, right? So why are they both there? So that's deprecated. That's just there for deprecation. Where's the whiteout? Most of your app is so when you write an app, most of your app is Go code, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and using the data store. Right? So storing things in the data store and retrieving things from the data store. So when you create a web app, that's most of your app. Your Go code is like the plumbing. This is Caleb. Connecting your HTML, CSS, JavaScript and the data store. That's kind of what you do when you write a web app. So there's a lot of stuff here, right? You got all that, you got all this, but this is the basics. So let's look at App Engine service users. So that's one of the services. And if we look here, just so you can track where you go, right? Under services, this is the one I would search for App Engine Go, and services, and then down here we've got users, right? And we have an overview, and then we have the reference. So that's what we're looking at now. Like, how do we do the user services? And this is where we're going to be able to have users log in and get user information, things like that. So logs users in using their Google account. Okay. And we're going to see that there's a couple of different ways that we could do sort of like, tracking our users and creating sessions, right? And one of the ways is we could just use Google's user services. But the downside of that is you are now, like if people don't have a Google account, they got to go get one, right? Or maybe they don't want to use their Google account to log into your porn site, right? Or whatever business you happen to have built. Right? They'd like it to be a little bit more anonymous. And so, so there's pluses and minuses. Logs users in using their Google account. And so some code. Let's take a look at this. So our app YAML over here, we're setting some restrictions. So, anything that comes in /admin / right? Anything after that, you have to be logged in as admin, right? And you could set the people who have admin credentials right in App Engine, right? And you just put their emails. And so when those people log in, okay, they now have access to this area, right? Because it recognizes they were set as admin. And so you don't set who is admin in your code. You set that like over in, I think, Google Developers Console under the, how do I configure this one project, right? That's where you set it.
Yes.
Yes! And then you have anything else that comes in, login is required. So this site's completely locked down. You got to log in to get into it. And so we have our func-init. There's no main because this is App Engine. This could be called anything we want up here, our package, anything, but we don't use func main. Everything's in func-init. And then we don't have HTTP listen and serve, right? We get that line out of there. There's App Engine, so it does that for us. So we just do the routing. And so here are the different routes. And we got index and admin. And index, you get a context. And so context is just like, we'll look at this more in a second, but it's just like a bundle of information that kind of gets passed around. And you'll experience this as you start to try to like build apps without using App Engine context, where you're like, let me just pass all this data around. You're going to be like passing data. So that's all that data, like, I don't know, like what is this user's cookie ID, right? Like I'm going to have to pass that, right? That's that and more stuff just all bundled together for you. And so then you go user current context, and we get the user, and we'll look at some of the documentation on this in a sec. And then user logout URL, and so we set the logout URL. When they log out, where do they go? I think that's what that does. And then
you give the context and you give them what URL you want them to come back to after they're logged out.
Yeah.
It'll redirect you to.
maybe if we saw this in action. Let's see what other slides I got here. So when you first go there, you're not logged in. You got to log in. And then there's a continue that says, hey, where are we redirecting back to? And you can see that that's just the / localhost 8080. Everything's escaped. And then when you're logged in as admin, so if I logged in as admin, I could go there. And then if I'm just logged in normally, I could go here. If I'm not admin, I wouldn't be able to go here. It's basic. There's no links or anything, but I just type that in. And if I wasn't admin, I wouldn't be able to go there. And so that is what you get from this code. And so we're just printing here the response. Printing here the response. Welcome. And then S is user, %S, right? And that's you. So the user that came out from that is welcome test@example.com. So that's what came out. And the URL, href sign out, URL, here's the URL, right? And so that's this one right here, sign out. And sign out would, kind of interesting to kind of curious to go look at that, see what the URL actually is on that. But that gets processed for you. And right, you don't have a page that you had to create where they have the login. So if it just, we just sent the person to, the default back, which according to our routes is going to serve index again. But because logins required at index, okay, what do I do now? Well, that's all handled for you by App Engine, and it just takes you to the Google login screen. This is being run locally, right? Just go app serve, not go app deploy. If I deployed it and ran it on the web, I'd actually have Google login page, right? I'd be logging in via Google. And the nice thing also about this is if you do have a site, people have confidence and faith in Google, right? Like if I use Google logins, cool, right? Like I trust Google. And if I use like Google Payment, all right, good, right? Like, Google's handling all the security. But at the same time, not a lot of people know about that. So a lot of people think, I don't want to log into this Hodonk website with my Google stuff. And then it's also, just from the user experience talking about for a second, a lot of people, including myself, it's like, what the heck, right? Like when this website, this app wants to have access to your friends, your emails, your pictures, your microphones on all of your computers. It's like, what? Who are these people? Why do they need all that stuff? So context is a piece of information that travels along with all the API requests. It's a little bit of a, opaque variable. Would you say that? You don't get to see into it.
It's a black box.
It's a black box. Opaque variable is a phrase that I have read, but I'm not totally clear on. Is that the right use of it?
Yeah. It's not
just
clear.
A black
so
box.
You can't see it, black
so
box.
I'm opaque on opaque variables. So that's the App Engine new context, where you get the context piece of information, and then this is the documentation. So we used new context right up here, and so let's go look at the documentation, right? And so right here we're in that, you guys know where we're at, or you need me to show you? All right. So there's the new context, and then, I'm showing you. API engine, the API reference, that's where we find it. And then here's the type context. So new context returns a context. Well, what is the type context? It doesn't give me a lot of insight into context. I look at this stuff and I'm like, okay, there's, different things in there, but, debug F, info F, warning F, error F, critical F, right? They, formats arguments according to the format analogous format printf and records the text as a log message at the debug level or the info level or the warning level or the error level or the critical level. I don't even know the differences between those levels.
In the logs in the official doc, if you go to the developer's console in the logs, you can filter based off level.
So you just get to determine, hey, if something happens at this level, it's just a warning level, or if something happens at this level, it's a critical level, and then you could go in and filter the logs later.
Yeah.
So, those are things that context has, and those are methods.
It's an interface. So.
Interface. All right. Well, they take interfaces. They're also interfaces? Because it looks like, context is an interface that implements these methods. Thank you. And then we have call and fully qualified app ID and request. Like I said, I don't know what all that does. Didn't give me a lot of insight. Do you have anything to say about it?
It's mostly a black box. You don't even need. You won't even be using these debug info and warning, logging methods. There are other ways to do it that are considered more appropriate. So just consider the context the black box. If you're going to do anything with App Engine, you'll get the context and pass it along with everything.
There you go. So now let's look at user's reference and look at some of that documentation. And so here, it's just the code, right? Where we had user.currentContext, user.currentContext. And if we look over here, right? So we're in the user package, and we're looking for current, and we pass in context. And so that gives us a pointer to a user. And that's what we got here is a user. Just kind of like showing you, oh, okay, let's look at the docs and see what it says. So we look at a user, like it's a struct, and it's got email, auth domain, admin, ID string, federated identity, federated provider.
So a lot of these things are deprecated, like auth domain. They used to be that you could sign in both through Google or through OpenID or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But the OpenID is deprecated, but they still have to keep the variable around for backwards compatibility.
You know anything about federated identity? I know that's like federation, meaning,
I'm pretty sure
Starship.
It's deprecated as well.
Yeah, I think so too. And then because we have a pointer to user, we have this one method right here, right? So there's the receiver and string. And so string returns a displayable name for the user. And then we have logout URL. So logout URL right here, logout URL, we saw that. And logout URL returns the URL that when visited signs the user out, then redirects the user to the URL specified by the destination. So just kind of interesting to see how they talk about it.
It's going to be different on your local machine compared to Google itself. And Google itself may change its URLs around. So by having it be a function instead of just being a constant, it's easier for Google overall.
Amazing. So thought out.
There's a login URL too if you care about that. But it's easier usually just to say login required for a page.
Setting that in app YAML. Right?
Yeah.
That's what I mean. So then, configuring with app YAML, that's like the other thing. And so here, if you go to configuring with app YAML under configuration, app config, that's where you could read about the app YAML, and here are some of those settings that we put into the app YAML. And this is where you add remove people with admin credentials. So we talked about that. We're inside Google Developers Console. That's why I put a red line under it, just so that I remember to say that. So we could say, hey, this person has admin credentials. And you can see that right here, Caleb has admin credentials. I got that screenshot from his presentation. Did I? It looks like it. It has to have been.
Looks like it.
This is not my computer at all right there.
You're usually not working at 9 in the morning.
I'm usually not working at 9 in the morning.
That's usually part of your 2 hours of sleep.
Yeah, part of my time with my family. What do you do if you don't want to use Google logins? Roll your own session management. And I think that's the end of this deck.
Yeah, roll your own. Grab Gorilla and use it. You can still use whatever you want.
Yeah. So let's see what else we can learn. 42. But before we learn rolling your own, cool, we still have a half hour. We're going to look at custom domains. This is short. And then we're going to look at Gorilla sessions. And then we're going to look at Julian Schmidt router. And then we're going to look at, I don't know, I guess somewhere in there we get to roll your own. I'm going to start a new video.